Ben led Opsware on a tremendous growth path and learned a lot of lessons, very valuable lessons about entrepreneurship and the hard thing about hard things. Some of the suffering that you had there came from being a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yes, no doubt. I mean, it's funny, back to your earlier point, like it's worse to be too early. Or, I guess you can survive. The lesson of Loudcloud is you can survive too early if you raise enough money and go through enough hell. The cloud represented all of the intelligence, and then the phone was done, and it was plugged into the smart cloud. And we thought you needed that for computing, and so there should be a computing cloud. And that's where we came up with the name, and everybody adopted it. But the company ran into real trouble because it was too early, and there were, a million reasons for it. From the cost of bandwidth to the cost of Sun Microsystems to the cost of EMC, and Linux, wasn't a thing yet, and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite a challenge.
Some of the very good lessons that come across in your book have to do with some of the things that happened there. And I imagine the challenge in managing morale and communication must have been something else.
In the technology business, then all of those things that you built, particularly if you're too early, eventually become relevant. But you have to survive. You have to not run out of cash. And that was probably the greatest lesson of the whole journey for me. Is
what are some of those top issues? What are some of the biggest challenges that you think all CEOs face at some point or another?
Probably, some of the bigger challenges are just, the little things. A key executive or engineer quits the company, like how do you handle that? Or, you've got to make, one of the biggest things that CEOs end up facing is like, you've kind of got two decisions to make, and, you've been through your life very successful, you're a great student in school, if you had, a job somewhere, you were the top employee, that's why you decided to become an entrepreneur. And then all of a sudden you're in this place where, okay, you have to choose between this, which is like lay off half the company, or that, which is, likely go bankrupt. And you don't know for sure you're going bankrupt, and you do know, like, for sure the consequences of laying off half the company, but yet and still, bankruptcy is much worse than laying off half the company. So, like, what do you do? And Mike Tyson I always viewed as, like, a person who clearly had no fear, but that wasn't true. And Mike Tyson kind of related this story that Customato said, look, fear, the difference between a hero and a coward is not what they feel. Everybody is scared. Like, you don't go into a boxing ring, and in my mind, you don't become, like, you're not going to be, like, in that position, having to do a layoff or having to do one of these things and not feel the fear. Everybody feels that. It's what you do that makes you a hero or a coward.
A part of considering that maybe fear is good or maybe paranoia is a good thing for a great CEO, okay, which should be the other main characteristics of the best CEOs you have in your portfolio, no?
Always be thinking about the company. Think about, okay, what's going on with the product architecture, like where are the weaknesses, what's going on with the underlying tools chain that we're using, is anything kind of coming out of favor or, not getting updated on time, what's going on in every customer, what's going on with the financing and the financial state of the company and so forth. And you're always kind of running through that loop, so when the decision comes to you, you know whether you need to weigh in and make it or not. And that, when you're good at the job, like you do that all the time, and every CEO who's got to a level of competency knows that. And it is kind of like a constant state of...
Obviously, walking through or potential CEOs, and you're investing in a lot of them. What kind of backgrounds do you find you're most attracted to or prefer?
So I think that the common characteristic that they both had, which I think is really probably the key one thing, is the ability to really be able to think for yourself. And I know that sounds like a kind of an odd thing to say. It's like, well, who can't think for themselves? That's a pretty low bar, Ben. But it turns out that, having original ideas is extremely difficult. And because if an idea is truly original, people are going to hate it. So you really have to trust your own judgment, and it's a very rare thing. And Peter Thiel has a great line about this, which is, he says, the best interview question is, tell me something that you believe that nobody else does, because even if you know that question is coming, it's very difficult to answer, because you know whatever you say, the interviewer is going to disagree with. And so now you're in that situation, having to defend your thinking. And that's, so that's probably the core thing, you know. Of course, you know, like courage and leadership skills and all those things matter very much as well. But that's, what is the idea? What is the market you're trying to go after? You know, who are the likely competitors? Like, you have to be able to describe your general thinking, of course.
Lots and lots of investments, investment possibilities. You make very few a year, very, very small in terms of percentages. So to give the audience a little bit of perspective, you know, I get, you know, some people get discouraged because they get the no. You know, how often do you say no? And how should the entrepreneur take the no?
A little over 99% of the time. So we see, like, really see, so we get, like, over the transom, like, people, you know, nutcases and, like, people who really aren't ready for this. You know, there's probably 10,000 people who send something in. But there's 3,000 that we look at every year, like somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 that we look at every year. And then we make about 20 investments where we go on the board. So it's very likely, it's, you know, overwhelmingly likely that we'll say no. And then I would say beyond that, like, we get a lot of those wrong. Like, when you have that kind of ratio, like, just because we say no, you know, some of it is like we missed it. Some of it might be the person who really understands that is, like, busy this week. It could be a lot of things. You know, it's not a perfect process by any stretch. And so, like, as an entrepreneur, if you believe in the idea and the VC like us says no, you know, it would be a mistake to get discouraged by that. You get a lot of no's. I got a lot of no's throughout my time as an entrepreneur. But you only need one investor to say yes. You know, you don't need 50% or 40% or 20%. You need one out of as many as you talk to. Now, if you go see 100 and they all say no, then that could be a sign. If you needed to be a CEO, if you were just an inventor, was one, a skill set, and that meant you know, just knowing the mechanics of the job. So we kind of started with this idea that all of the original partners have been like founders or CEOs and could help you with that skill set. And the second thing, which was equally important, was a network.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you for taking the time. Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.